Hello cloud experts. So before we start learning AWS, let us quickly understand what is cloud computing and why it is important for us to learn. My name is Sanjay Kumar and I am a cloud trainer and consultant. So we'll understand cloud computing, but before we talk about it, let us understand how the traditional IT infrastructure was developed in the corporate networks. So typically all the physical infrastructure like servers, which includes processors, compute, storage and networking components, they were actually deployed in the corporate network. On top of this, we had some platforms which are typically the runtime environments, operating systems and stuff like that. They were also managed within the corporate network, and all the services were deployed and provided by the servers which were available in the corporate network. All these resources can be connected by using the corporate network, and you have to be either available locally to configure these resources, or you have to connect through some VPNs which will have a lot of limitation. However, now all these things, whether it is infrastructure or platforms or services, all these things can be stored in something called as cloud. We'll understand what is the cloud. But before we talk about it, this cloud infrastructure is available over internet. Anybody sitting anywhere in the world can access this cloud infrastructure and can do the configuration or commission some resources, or also release some resources as and when required. All these things can be done manually, and some of these functions can be done automatically as well. Now, to access these devices, you can do it from any mobile phone, any computer, or any laptops or desktop, etc. In addition to this, there are multiple tools available to configure these resources. You can do it with the web graphical user interface. You can do it with CLI commands, which is command line interface, or you can do it by using some APIs or SDK, which is like software development kits. So there are various ways to configure the cloud resources. Now, in simple words, what is cloud computing? Cloud computing is nothing but a remote computer or server which is remotely hosted. So if you really want to understand cloud computing in simple words, it is nothing but a simple computer or a server which is hosted in some other location which is remote from us, and that is why we call it cloud computing. However, if we really want to understand this in technical words, so it's a collection of large computing resources, large computing environments, which are typically called as data centers. Data centers are a shared pool of resources which can be provided to end user with an on-demand model. So in technical words, a cloud computing infrastructure is a large computing environments which are typically some data centers which are shared pool of resources which can be provided to the end user with an on-demand model. Now, what are the data centers? Data centers are the collection of huge computers or servers which will have almost infinite capacity. So we will have a lot of big servers available somewhere in the remote location, which are having all the power backups, all the redundancy, all the high availability, and they are available to be configured from internet, and any user can get these resources based on the requirement what they have, and they can release the resources whenever they don't want it, and they only pay for the resources what they use at a given point of time. Now, as per the NIST definition, NIST, which is National Institute of Standard and Technology, what is cloud computing? So cloud computing is a model of enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources, which we discussed in the last slide, which is typically the data center, that includes network, servers, storage, applications and services, and that can be rapidly provisioned, so you can get it configured as and when you want, and you can also release it whenever you don't want it, with the minimal management effort from service provider interaction. So you don't really need to speak to the cloud provider to configure these resources or release these resources. You can do it whenever you want it, and you can release it whenever you don't really need it. So this typically cloud model is composed of three things. One is 5 essential characteristics, 3 different service models, and 4 different deployment models. We are going to talk about all these 3 things one by one. Now, before we talk about it, let us understand what are the other benefits of cloud computing. Cloud computing is changing the way how the IT infrastructure is supplied and consumed in the world, and all these things are now done virtually. On-prem data centers, the traditional data center which is typically called as on-premises data centers, and now they have moved to virtually hosted environments with state-of-the-art features and services. So these hardwares, these softwares and the services are one of the best in the industry, and they are all virtually hosted and accessible via internet. Now services can be subscribed as and when they required. So services can be subscribed on demand. You only pay for the services what you use. You only pay for the resources what you use. That's why they say pay as you go. Data centers are owned and operated by public cloud provider, the company like AWS, the company like Azure. These are the companies who are actually owning these data centers and also operating these data centers. Go global in minutes. Because these companies have global infrastructure available, you can launch your services, you can deploy your services globally typically in minutes. Time to market for services, because you can quickly deploy your services, your time to market for your services is extremely low. This cloud computing has become a game changer in the IT industry and getting very popular with the exponential growth. Now, just to take an example, there is one user who is looking for some server space which is like 16 vCPUs and 256 GB storage. There can be another user who needs some ready-made applications from the cloud computing, and there can be another user who just needs some additional storage for his application. Now, cloud computing provides all these various type of services, whether it is related to only to the storage or related to the applications or some kind of compute capacity. Now, what are the different characteristics of cloud? The characteristics of cloud, the first one is on-demand self-service. That means the end users can access these resources, can configure these resources by using self-service portals, and can create it whenever there is a demand. Now, broad network access, that means these resources can be accessed from anywhere in the world by variety of equipment and variety of tools. Multi-tenancy and resource pooling, we have talked about resource pooling already, where all the resources, all the data centers are pooled in, and they are given for the multi-tenant architecture where multiple users are actually sharing the same infrastructure. The capacities, the compute capacity or the storage capacity can be increased at any point of time, so it comes with rapid elasticity and scalability, and they normally come with some automatic tools where they can increase the capacities as and when they're required by setting up some thresholds, and whenever those thresholds are met, they are actually increasing the capacity, and whenever these values are going down, they can also decrease the capacity. Now, major services, all the services what we use are being measured in the real time, and you only pay for the services what you use. Now, cloud comes with three service models. The first one is called as IaaS, which is called as infrastructure as a service, where you are just using the infrastructure part of it. The infrastructure means here the virtual CPUs, the memory, storage or networking resources. So you move your platform and applications to the infrastructure which is available in the cloud. However, it comes with another service model called as PaaS, which is called as platform as a service. In this case, you also get the infrastructure, but along with the infrastructure, you also get app development tools, runtime environments, some integrations, OS images, all those things, and you build your applications by using these platforms and the underlying infrastructure. However, if you really want to use the services directly, you have another service model called as software as a service, where you can use application related to notification, queuing, SMS, emails or workflow, and you can use these services directly. Now, to understand this, let us have a look at this picture. So in case of traditional IT, all these functions from here to here, whether it is applications, data, runtime environments, middleware, OS, virtualization, servers, storage, networking, all these were the responsibility of the customer. However, in the case of infrastructure as a service, customer is responsible for the applications and the platform, and the infrastructure part is now taken care by the cloud provider. In case of platform as a service, The customer takes care of only application and data part of it, and all other part related to the platform as well as the infrastructure is taken care by the cloud provider. However, in case of software as a service, all the things from the physical infrastructure till the applications are the responsibility of the cloud provider, and consumer, the end user, is just going to use these services and paying for the services what they use. Now, cloud also have 4 deployment models which are called as public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, and community cloud. The public cloud is the cloud infrastructure which is available for anybody and everybody. Anybody can subscribe to these resources and can use these resources whenever they are needed. In case of private cloud, this is a cloud infrastructure which is actually built for one particular organization and it is used only within that organization. In hybrid cloud, you use a mix of private and public cloud where you have your on-prem data centers. However, what you want to do is some additional capacities or additional storage, and those things can be consumed over public internet, so public cloud, right? So in this case, hybrid cloud is a kind of, you have on-prem data centers or some private cloud as well. At the same time, for additional capacities or workloads, you are also relying on public infrastructure. The community cloud is typically designed for some community welfare related to health, social, or government related stuff, and this is typically available for a certain community or special help groups. Now, just to understand, private cloud, the end-to-end infrastructure is managed by one particular organization and it is only used for one particular organization. In hybrid cloud, you are using a mix of private cloud and the public cloud, and in the public cloud you are using the resources from company like AWS or Azure, and these are the typical cloud which are being used as a public cloud. So these resources can be used by anybody and everybody, and they can consume these services. They can actually deploy these services by using internet access to these cloud computing and can set up all their resources according to their requirement. Now, what are the typical application today? Day in and day out, whatever applications we are using, most of those applications are actually built on cloud computing. Some of these applications can be Zoom, can be Google Classroom, which is used for online classes for the kids, Google Drive, which we are typically using for the storage, and WhatsApp, YouTube, or Google Meet. So these are some of the applications which we are using on daily basis, and all these services are actually built on the cloud computing platforms. Now, who are the leading cloud service providers? So AWS is one of the market leader for cloud computing services, but followed by another 3 companies which is like Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, and Alibaba Cloud. However, these 3 companies, AWS, Azure, and Google, have acquired more than 50% market share in the cloud computing market. Now, if you look at this picture, this is a Gartner Magic Quadrant, where we see the leader part of it, and in leader, the AWS or Amazon Web Services is the market leader for more than 10 years, followed by Microsoft and Google. Now, if you look at the right side of it, which is market share in the Q2 of 2020, and this is a report published by Synergy Research Group, where we see Amazon has a market share of 33% and Microsoft has a market share of 18%, and Amazon have a market share of almost twice of Microsoft. So AWS is actually have market share almost twice of the closest competitor. Now, that's all what we have in this session. I hope you enjoyed the session. Look forward to see you in the next session.